Hey there, my name is Zach with HouseStack Property Management, and I am a software engineer by trade, and I have also been working on building a property management company for the past 5 years or so. And so something that I've been thinking a lot about lately is breaking my company into repeatable workflows, and the idea of automating these particular workflows that we come across and repeat them over and over again. Alex Hormozi just released a video, longtime fan of Hormozi and his content, and he talked about how he is using AI and implementing inside of acquisition.com and his portfolio companies. And one thing that he has been, mentioning and talking to recently is creating the concept of a workflow inside of your company. So a workflow is a repeatable task that has a clear input, a set of steps, and a measurable output. And so if your team does something on maybe more than once a week, that's something that we can actually put into a workflow and do it again and again. So how to identify a workflow inside of your own company is, sit down, write down every task that your team did this week, and then ask 3 questions. So what triggered the task is something like a date, an input message. So for me, it might be a tenant message or an event inside of, our property management system. Is it something that repeats? And then can you describe what you expect is both the output and the input? So some examples of workflows that I've built for our own company is, syncing our listings if there is a new vacancy that is coming up for my property management company, or doing automated rental pricing for existing listings based on the market, or responding to tenant inquiries that come in, across our SMS messaging system. And one that I will demo today too is also completing eviction documentation. So in Colorado, if we have a tenant who hasn't paid rent or is behind in rent or has, violated their lease in some way, what we do is we fill out and complete this particular guide and all of these forms for a particular tenant to have it posted to the property. And so one thing that I've done here is automated, this particular process, and I can do a quick demo of that shortly here. So prepped this command here, so you can take a peek at it when it runs. And what this has done is it's gone through and it's actually built out the eviction documentation for a given tenant. So this is a test tenant with a test property, but some things that happen here to complete this eviction documentation is we need to retrieve the information for how far past the tenant is due on rent, fill out some other information from the county tax assessor website. So for example, this is a fake property, but it will go out and retrieve the information per property, the rent that's past due, etc. And so this is something that we do on a repeatable cadence when tenants are behind on rent. And this can all be done now with just a single command that goes out, grabs the information from our database, combines the information with AppFolio, retrieves all of the PDF inputs that we need to, or the PDF files to fill out and complete with the inputs, and completes all this documentation for us. This is something that probably would take 30 to 60 minutes typically to fill out otherwise. And so automating this particular process for us saves us a ton of time. One thing to go over too is that when we create workflows, there are some specific things that we need to do to make sure that it runs properly. So this is where most people stop, and why automations don't run properly, or maybe if you create a browser automation to do something, then eventually it will break and you have to maintain it. However, now with the framework that I've built, and also just a different way to look at this, is when you have a workflow, what happens is when it's run, it's overseen by a manager agent that ensures that the workflow is run properly. It heals itself if the workflow runs into any issues. So it will take any of the issues that pop up or any errors that pop up in the workflow process and edit the workflow itself to be able to fix itself in real time and retrieve the desired output. So not all workflows are equal. Some are more sensitive, some are less sensitive. This is a relatively less sensitive one, especially in the demo that I prepared here, given it has fake information. But there are things that we need to do to make sure that a workflow runs properly and it's not causing more issues. So things like, for us is updating AppFolio, so doing browser automation to go in and set tenant information, lease signing, things like that. So one thing inside of the framework that I implemented is the concept of idempotency, which means that if it is run twice, it is still having the same result. So if it's run once or 5 times, it still has the same result. So an example of that might be setting a unit status to vacant, right? If we run it multiple times, the status should always be vacant instead of, causing some issue in the system if it errors out halfway through, or, whatever it might be, or if it's run multiple times. Now, another overview of some of the other automations that I put in place for my company that reduce the amount of time that we spend managing tenants and properties, just to give you an idea here. So these are ones that I'm building inside of my framework to create new features, workflows, etc. Then we have it broken out into operations, content and marketing, data sync, legal and compliance, tax reporting, etc. And each of these workflows are ones that we deploy on Google Cloud to be run on a set cadence, or we can orchestrate and run manually whenever they need to be run. And they're exposed to my team through our website. And this saves us a ton of time at the moment. The other concept here is that when we give an agent the idea of being able to oversee a workflow and update the workflow on its own, we also have to implement some guardrails around what it can and can't do. So we don't want agents to go into our code base, for example, and create a ton of new files. And we also need to make sure that we have the idea of updating only the deterministic execution. So what that means is an agent has an idea and it does some things and it runs some stuff just like an employee would be doing inside of your company. However, when we have when we translate these workflows into the input and the output, what we need to do is we need to make sure that every time it's run, it has a very clear input and output. And if each time it's run, it should have the same result. So for example, we don't want to have eviction documentation filled out randomly per some agent's idea now that it's updating some parts of the code. So what we've done is we've translated these workflows into deterministic steps. So what that means is, technically, we're translating these workflows into, JavaScript right now that will go in and make sure that each of the workflow executions is deterministic, which means that every time it's run, it's going to do the same exact thing, and there's no difference once it's run. So once it's good, it's run. We get the one output. The only time it would actually update these flows or these executions is if there's an error, and then it would come back and fix itself or fix the deterministic output. So that is the overview of what I'm currently working on and how I'm thinking about breaking down my business into AI workflows. And if you'd like to follow me, feel free to subscribe.